Hello everybody, welcome to episode 55 of Show Viewers. Today we'll be going over episode 3 of Invincible Season 4. And this episode was back to actually like Mark and Eve stuff going on and the stuff going on Earth rather than stuff going on in space with the coalition and all that. But yeah, so our episode starts off and we see as Cecil and Donovan are talking and they're discussing about how Mark killed the the dude the other time when the Sequids had invaded. And he killed him because he had to, but they're still discussing this, and they're like, yes, he is slowly becoming more and more accustomed to more conclusive actions when it comes to his heroism. So they're just kind of talking about this and seeing how it could eventually become a problem. But then Cecil ends up calling him Mark, and we see as Mark comes in, and him and Cecil are discussing this, and Cecil tells him how he's covered it up, but he has to watch out for himself. And then he sends in D.A. Sinclair, and I believe it's D.A. I know it's Sinclair, but he sends Sinclair, who is the dude who made like the robots in the first season, and was turning people into robots. But yeah, we see as he comes in, and he's very apologetic for what he has done, and he's apologizing to Mark and all that good stuff. But Mark's like, okay, buddy, I don't need to hear your apology. Get out of here. And Cecil's like, oh God, afterwards. And Mark's like, did you think I was gonna kill him? He's like, you could at least there's no way it didn't at least cross your mind. So we see this, then we move along, and we eventually get a perspective of Titan. We can see his Titan's out in the park with his family. People are watching him and all that good stuff. And well, not people are watching. That's not good stuff, but people are watching him while he's walking with his family. And eventually, there is an attack. He has to cover his family with his stone powers and all that. And he eventually sends him off to safety, while he ends up fighting this dude who. Well, he actually doesn't end up sending him off to safety. They actually end up getting kidnapped. And well, they're not getting kidnapped. They're okay. Yeah, because this is the double agent dude who's both for Boss Liu, and I think it's Liu. Yeah, Liu. Or Boss Liu. I can't. It's the little dragon dude. But yeah, the actual agent who is working for Titan at the time ends up taking him to safety. But then we see as Titan fights this razor blade dude. He's a weird hero. I mean, he just like throws blades. But yeah, ultimately he ends up coming out on top. And then we see as he heads back. Now, after this, we end up seeing as Mark and Eve are, Mark is, like, kind of recovering from what he did to the dude. And Eve is out in the forest testing her powers, and she's still unable to successfully maintain her, materialization stuff because it's just falling to liquid. And Mark's trying to call her since he is going through this stuff, since he killed a man, and he's feeling really guilty about it. But she doesn't end up answering. Then, eventually, they end up getting in contact. And we see Mark's like, okay, we're going to send you to Rex, or Robot, and he can hopefully help repair your powers as he did, or at least alter your powers as he did with Monster Girl. So they send Eve off, and Eve does some testing. And during this, there is nothing really shows up as bad, and everything seems regular. But Robot and Eve are kind of both on edge because Eve really wants to get her powers back. But Robot's like, it'll take probably about a year, and she kind of freaks out a little bit on it, but then she apologizes. And I guess it's probably a good time to, we'll just keep going along. But yeah, and then eventually there's a reading on their thing, and it shows up, on one of Robot's. Okay, well, actually, no. We're going to cut through, we're going to go elsewhere. But before this, we had seen as Eve and Mark got ready together at the house. They were talking, discussing, all that good stuff. And they end up getting a call from Invincible Inc. And Mark and Eve are both struggling at the moment, so neither of them really want to go. So Oliver ends up volunteering himself. Now we'll go back to that. But they see as a reading on one of Robot's little computers shows that there is Flaxons, or however you call them, Flaxians. I believe they're Flaxons. But they have started to invade again. But then we see as Oliver ends up going to to Titan's place, and this was because Titan was needing some assistance to go against Boss Liu, because he attacked his family. He was not going to stand for that. And then, also I forgot to mention this, but at the beginning of the episode, we also see as Machine Head attempts to re-recruit Titan to the Order, but he's kind of like, I'm denying that for right now. But then we end up swapping back to the Flaxen invasion. We see as the Guardians pull up and they're trying to stop them by finding a transmitter that keeps them alive. Because how the Flaxens work is that when they're on Earth, they have to have certain devices or they would instantly age because Earth's air and all that's essentially like a toxin to them. But they see as they're invaded and they can't find any devices which are helping them maintain their youth. So they're trying to figure this out while also killing him. This time the Flaxons are taking human hostages, so they're transporting them back to the portal and also are remaining alive without any apparent technology in use. However, eventually they end up deducing that they're using an antenna to maintain this youthfulness for them. However, it is not on Earth. So we see as that progresses along, but then we end up going to a perspective of Oliver and the Titan, and they end up going over to Mr. Liu, and we see as Oliver is fighting the dragon of Mr. Liu's, and Mr. Liu doesn't turn into a dragon this time, but he's fighting a dragon. I don't remember exactly if he turns into a dragon. I believe he does turn into a dragon. I think that's why he's the dragon dude, but he didn't turn into a dragon this time. But we end up seeing as Oliver fights the dragon, and the Titan is fighting Liu's big buff goon, and this fight kind of continues along, and Oliver ends up getting pretty beat up and all that good stuff, and he's unable to defeat the dragon on his own. But then we swap back to the Guardians, and we see as Robot and Monster Girl end up crossing over through the portal because they have presumed that the transmitter that keeps the Flaxons youthful is on that side, which was correct. So they end up going over there, and Robot ultimately ends up destroying the transmitter. However, during this, Robot sends a message back to the Guardians on the other side because he recognized that there was a large army of Flaxons that were still prepared, ready to attack Earth on the other side of the portal. So he sends a message to them. He's like, yo, we have to come here and kill all of them, so we have to be on their planet if we want all of this to end. So he's like, okay, come along, Guardians. And then one of the Flaxons actually picks up on what's about to happen. So as he's about to age and die from the now exposed Earth gases and all that stuff, he runs over to the portal, and as he's slowly aging and dying, he falls through the portal, gets some Flaxon air so he doesn't completely age, turns, shoots the tower that's keeping the portal open, that closes the portal, cuts him in half, and leaves the Guardians there. Now, I forgot to say, but Mark joined the Guardians for this part of the mission too, but, he wasn't really that integral of a portion. But, yeah, so that's kind of where the Flaxon invasion ends, with Monster Girl and Robot being stuck on the Flaxian planet, and the Guardians having successfully gotten the people back due to Monster Girl and Robot's efforts. However, they are now down 2 members. But then we see after this as Mark ends up actually flying over to help with Oliver, and once he gets there, he sees that Oliver's gotten beaten up, and he's like, Oliver tells him why he got beat up. He was like, yeah, I didn't want you or Eve to have to worry about me doing a bad job. However, he's got the crap beat out of him. So he ends up ultimately going with the dragon and fighting with him, eventually making him run off. Him and Oliver end up as some kind of double teaming. But then he ends up pulling up on Titan, and he just starts wailing on Titan, just beating the crap out of him because he got Oliver's, he got Mark's family involved. And eventually Oliver's like, yo, stop. And Mark ends up getting off of him, and we see as Mark walks away. So this is another indicator of Mark just losing it. Like, Mark is breaking down. And I'm really ready to see, how this goes, because, Mark is beating the crap out of more people and is obviously getting more and more, acquainted with the idea of killing individuals. But I guess we'll really have to see how that plays out. But then it ultimately ends up progressing along. We see as Mark and Eve are chilling at the house, and they're just kind of talking and all that good stuff. And Mark's like, I don't know what almost happened again. Also, I forgot there's a side plot of Debbie and her boyfriend throughout all this, and they're talking about buying a house and starting to live together, but Debbie's not really wanting to sell her house, and she raised her kids there and lived there for 20 years. But that's not really important because, I don't really find it interesting, but, you might, but that's that. But, yeah, so that's kind of where the episode ends. Then we get our post-credit scene. Not our post-credit scene, but really our post-episode scene, because it's only like 2 seconds into the credits when we see this scene, usually. But it is actually not of Viltrumites this time. It is of Mark waking up in the middle of the night, and he goes to the bathroom because he recognizes that Eve is no longer in his bed. He goes to the bathroom, knocks on the door, and she's like, I'll be out in a second. And, in her hand, she has a positive pregnancy test. I don't know where that will go. I honestly am not big on that being the post-episode scene, because honestly, I'm not big on, the more human aspects of Invincible. I just prefer the world and the world building and all that good stuff. But I bet it'll probably lead to at least something intriguing. And probably lead to an indicator to why Eve is losing her powers, because she's feeding another human, so she's probably weakened by that. But I really don't know if that'll end up being it, but I honestly kind of hope it does, because that'd be a cool way to kind of intertangle and interconnect how she is becoming weaker, or at least our powers are becoming weaker. But, so we, that was all the really episode. All there really was to the episode. Holy stutter! And I'm just really ready to see where that goes. And I'm ready to see more of the Viltrumites. I'm ready to see more of the Coalition. I'm ready to just see more of the world rather than the individuals. Because I've always loved the world building and world of Invincible more than I have the individuals. I've always found, at least in the show, the relationships to be kind of corny and kind of elementary, but not really elementary, but rudimentary. There we go. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about episode 3 of Invincible season 4, and that's all I really have for episode 55 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.